Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth episode of our new series. Today I promised I'd go over the PHP and whatnot needed for doing a simple login. A super simple login. So a couple things about this that you're going to have to figure out your own encryptions and your own ways of protecting your data. I'm going to go over an extremely simple case which you need to enhance. You should never leave it this way. But, okay. But before we get started, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Please leave a comment. Let me know if you want more of this. If not, I'm just going to move on to, basically to starting to create the game. But I'm happy to stick on this topic a little bit more if you guys want. Okay. So, talk about database creation. I'll do that in just a second. I'm going to show the table creation. I am going to go over this login PHP over here, which I will go over in just a second. I'm not going to type it out because when I do this stuff, I do it using code that I've been using for decades, and I'm not super comfortable with writing all this stuff, but I have written this by hand. I have gone through and make sure it tested it. It does work. I don't have all my helper functions in there, and it's kind of torture for me, so I'm going to do it this way. I know I almost always type it out. I apologize. That's not how I'm doing it this time. I will try to make the text a little bigger so you guys can see it really easy. Anyway. And then we are going to adjust our code project, and then we're going to test it. So first I'm going to talk about the database creation. So the reason I'm not going to do that on screen is, well, a few-fold. One is I don't want you guys seeing my credentials and stuff like that, and I'm not the greatest video editor, and so there's that. Second is it's kind of different everywhere. The creation of the database is just done so differently between AWS or using a shared provider like Bluehost, both of which I have accounts with. HostGator is another one we have accounts with. We have a dedicated server through, I forget what the other one is. Anyway, regardless, please don't use GoDaddy. It's garbage, but it would work. But you're gonna have to look up how to create the database. I apologize for that, and then you're gonna have to look up how to get your database hosting path. Unfortunately, I really can't go through that step in such a way that you're going to know what you're doing anyway. So you're going to have to look it up for your individual provider, and there will be a host of blog posts and or videos to show you how to go through that. So I apologize that I can't really do that, but it's because it's going to be different everywhere, and if I show you one way, you're going to say, well, that's not how it works on this place. Well, I'm aware. I'm sorry. But once you create your database, you can log in through phpMyAdmin, and then once you do that, then you can create a table, which I'm going to go over right now. All right, guys, I'm going to quickly go over how to create a database via MySQL Workbench. See that there? You can download that on the internet. Just do a quick Bing, Google, whatever search. Download, install it. You'll have to connect to your database via the domain/IP and a username and password, which you should have if you created your database. But here's how to create a table. So you come in here, you right-click on tables, hit create table. This will pop up. We're going to create a users table, but I'm going to name it something else. So let's just say temp user. Because I'm going to delete this. I don't want it in my database. But my rules for doing databases is that you start with an ID. That ID should be unique and auto increment. Auto increment means that the ID will be 1 and then 2 and then 3 then 4 then 5 then 6, and you don't have to tell it that. It just knows. A user table needs a username, so username. The reason I underscore is because every table that I create is going to match the name. So here we're saying temp user, but in this case it'd be user ID, username, user pass for password. Name can be whatever length you want. This is the length of the string of our car is a string. Password, same thing. My passwords actually need to be 63, if I remember right. And then, you know what, I actually don't remember, so I'm going to put it at 128 because we're going to SHA it, and I can't remember what the SHA string produces. But anyway, then we're going to do a user created. This is for that Unix timestamp that we talked about last time. So we're just going to create an int, or a big int, I'm sorry. And the reason we do a big int is because if you do int, it's going to overflow in like 10 years or something. So in order to protect against that, we use big int. It's much larger. It'll go until, like, you know, the sun explodes and cremates the earth. I mean, not quite that long, but you get what I'm trying to say. It goes for a really long time, so use big int for anything that's a timer. And then we have user status, and that one would just be an int as well. If you wanted to do something like add comments to something, so we'd say 0 is inactive, 1 is active, and maybe 2 is incomplete, something like that. So then you can save that status. If you want a default, so for instance, your default status should be 0. Your default created should also be 0. We don't need a default password or these things defaulted, but this will give us what we need in order to use a really basic user table, and you can keep adding fields for whatever you want to store. When you're done with this, all you have to do is hit apply. I'm not going to do that now because I don't want this table in here, and I have this way up here so you can't see all the tables in here, but you get what I'm saying. I think that covers the creation of a table, and then you would be able to fill that table via information coming from some sort of sign up or login form. Okay, now that that table's created, let's go over the PHP. So first things first, I am going to go through this line by line and describe what's going on. So certain things are done in blocks, but I'll kind of go over them. What is all this crap that's around user now, right? Like we had just the post coming in before, right? Well, normally you're going to URL encode on the other side, so you're going to decode on this side. We're not going to worry about that, so this is wasted. You're going to strip tags. So if somebody tries to throw in JavaScript or some kind of scripting language into your database, this will remove those tags. You have HTML entities. This will deal with removing anything else that gets through. And then we're going to add slashes just as a final safety precaution, just in case something that I'm not considering goes through and you start putting quotes and stuff to start to break the query string, and it will add slashes to it and no longer break the query string. So this is just a safety precaution to try to make sure that you're not getting SQL injections. That's what all this stuff does. Hold on, let me... There, we'll just go really big for those that complain at me that they can't read it. So it's URL encode, strip tags, HTML entities with all this stuff in it, and then add slashes. Okay, so what does this do? So SQL injections are when you have a query string, and our query string is right here, just for the record. So if I were to put in, you know, like a double quote in there and then all kinds of other stuff, and then I put... And we're doing a prepared statement, so it wouldn't even work here anyway. But let's say we weren't using a prepared statement. The reason I'm using a prepared statement is to also protect you guys. If you use a standard statement that allows you to use query strings and everything to run things through, you could, in theory, put double quote in here, break out of this, add a bunch of code into the middle of it, and then you could inject whatever you wanted into their database. So we try to protect against that. This is a good way to start. There is more you can do. This is what I could grab out that wasn't wrapped in a bunch of helper functions. This is not enough. It is a start, nothing more. All right, what are we doing to our password? So our password, so both these come in through post, just to mention that. We're going to SHA it. So this is a SHA 256. It's going to give you, if I remember right, it's a 64 character non-reversible encryption. So what you want to do is you want to store a non-reversible encryption for passwords. This being the very simplest and not good enough. Please do more than this. But what this does is it's going to give you a crazy looking string. Here, let me just grab one so that I can kind of give you an idea. Give me just a second. I have something open I can look at. Okay, so it's going to give you something that looks like this. This comes from a password that is only 7 or 8 characters long. And you store this into your database when you create the account. And you never store the actual password. You store this. If you store the actual password, then you can get hacked and the person has access to everybody's account. So if your user table gets hacked, everybody's information is basically, everybody's accounts are compromised, and whatever's stored in the user table is compromised as well, but that's a given. So we store like this. And the reason we store it like this is because you can't read it. So if I tried to log in as this user, there's no way I could do it because I would put this into the password and it would come up with something even crazier. And it would not match what's in the database. Now, if you match the password and I run the same encryption on the incoming login test, which would be this. So whatever this is, you run the same encryption as you run on the password before you stick it in the database. Again, this is the very simplest you should do. What's going to happen is you're going to end up with a matching password, and you just basically say, do they match? And if the answer is yes, then, oh, look, you can log in. You don't actually know what that password is, but it can match. Why is this not good enough? Well, first of all, there are SHA keys out there. And whereas the collisions are few and far between, they do exist. And so you actually could have 2 passwords that create the same SHA hash. So there's that problem. Secondarily, you want to have your own thing. You don't want people to be able to somehow get a hold of your database and then be able to figure out what you did to get that. They should need to be able to hack your FTP and your database. And now you're talking about a serious feat if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So anyway, make yourself a custom irreversible hash that produces millions, if not billions, hundreds of millions, if not hundreds of billions of possibilities or more. And that will really reduce the chance that anybody would ever be able to brute force your passwording. Okay, so A-date we covered. That's just a Unix timestamp. These are kind of things that are nice when you want to do some logging. I'm not going to do that. This is just setting up the page is initially in an error state. And then if you see down here, if we get in here, then we can tell it's a success. Okay. I forgot to move these. That was just test code. We get rid of them. Okay. First things first, you need to log into your database. So connection equals MySQL I_connect. Now the I is newer. When I say newer, I mean like, I don't know, 12 years old now. It used to be MySQL_connect. You use the I because the I handles some new code more efficiently, and it also allows for prepared statements and whatnot. Oh, there's my cat again. Okay, so we have 4 variables you are going to have to fill in from logging in into your database. So you create your database, you're going to have the host. This is a IP or a URL, some type of domain entity that goes there. This, you'll have a user that you create and a password for that user, and then the name of the database. These are things I can't give you right now. These would have my information in them currently. You will have to fill these out. If you don't fill them out, won't do anything, right? Okay. Now, these are the, let's see. how do we describe this? Is a query, right? This is a database query. If you've never seen one, they kind of read in English, basically. So select all, that's what the star means, from user, that's the table, where column and column. Now, these question marks are something that happens in a prepared statement, and what they do is they remove the ability for SQL injections. And so we like those. You should be using prepared statements for anything that comes in from post data or any user controlled variable. There are times in which you can not have to use prepared statements, but you should always use it with data that comes in from post variables, or like I said, user created data. Okay, so again, select, this is a keyword in MySQL, all from table users where username is equal to something and password is equal to something. Those somethings are put into this array. Now, you don't have to put these in an array. I have them in an array because that is how my code works from decades of doing this. So I didn't want to completely deconstruct everything. Next, they're going to tell them what kind of data we can expect. Well, we can expect a string here, and we can expect a string here. If this were ints, you could put in an I. So if this was a string and this was an int, then you could put in an I. Why do you want to declare these things? Well, it further reduces the chance of somebody putting in something that takes advantage of your database somehow. So string is one of the least protective, but if you start putting in I for int, like if you're testing an ID or something, then it makes it very clear that only an int can go there, and you remove the ability for anybody to even be getting cutesy with their database. They're not going to be able to do SQL injections. They're not going to be able to do a lot of things, but they might still be able to get cute with something else. So you want to be as strict as you can with these. In this case, we really can't be strict, so they're both strings. Okay. Next, we use the connection, and I forget the term, but essentially you're setting the query string. Then you're going to bind your parameters. Now, remember, you have this sequence. So it's telling him, so first we have our statement. So statement, put it in there. And this is the bound SQL string. And then we have what we expect, which is 2 strings. And then we're going to feed it 2 strings. Now, if you fed it 3 strings, you would just keep adding variables in here. If you added 30 strings, you would just keep adding variables in here. And there's a way to get around having to manually add them, but this is this is how that works. So that's setting up all your data that's coming in, and then here we're going to execute that string, right? So that's basically say, hey, I put everything in, I want you to execute it, right? Next, we have to get the data out, and so we take the statement, which has been executed on, and we pull the results out. We set them equal to results. And then we fetch this is fetching a single line of the results, so a single entry of the results. And then we can also count how many entries we have. So in this case, we want to test, hey, if there's exactly 1 row, meaning we match it to exactly 1 user, then we want to grab the user ID. So to do that, so this is another column. So we have a column username, a column password, we have a column user ID. To get the data that's inside that column for this entry, we just say fetch, and then the square brackets, and inside that, the name, a string of the name of the column. And that will result in giving us our user ID. Pretty simple. We also want to tell the program it's a success, and then give a simple message. And then we have this, which we kind of went over last time. This time, though, we've concatenated in our response and our message and our return data, which I mentioned. So I'm hoping this helps a little bit. I understand it's not going over it in the same amount of detail I usually go over things. I did not want to type this out. I would just simply be making 50 plus typing mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. And I don't do this anymore this way. I use all of this stuff is used, but it's wrapped up in so many layers of abstraction. It's just not, it's not something I'm used to writing anymore. I write differently than what this looks like for what I do for work. And I don't want to give away those functions. And I also don't want to type it all out. So that's why I kind of went this route. Okay. So that's that. The next thing we need to do is, we need to fix up our code here. And so our user is going to be tutorial user, and I will leave this up for a very short time. This will not be available forever. When I say very short, it'll be under a year. If you're doing this 3 years from now, I don't want to hear, "Hey, I can't connect to the test user on the database." I mean, the database probably won't even exist anymore that I'm using. Okay, so just bear with me here. This is for now. I apologize if it's not here later, but just change out the format to whatever your stuff is that you created, and then it'll be fine. And then we don't want that. We want temp PW, right? Probably one of the worst passwords in the world, but that's not the point. It's a temp user. It has no rights. It doesn't do anything. And this is not a real login. So bear with me. And then the last thing we're going to do is switch out the actual location. So it's just basic login. So if we run this, it should give us a success and give us a user ID. So let's see it. See if it happens here. Here we go. Success, user ID 24. So we got what we're looking for. Yay. And that's the login. So I understand that I haven't covered this quite the same as I normally do. I understand that it may not have filled in all the blanks. If you have a big blank that's not the creation of the database, please let me know. I'll happily try to help you guys out. I'll be a little bit more available code-wise if you guys need it. But that is where we're at for this particular setup. If you guys want more on this, I need to hear about it. Otherwise, I am going to move on. So please, 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 if you're begging for more of this stuff, let me know. If not, I'm going to just start writing some code, building a game. All right, guys, I hope you have had a good experience here. I hope that you have learned something, and I hope that you're a little bit more capable of writing, basic PHP queries. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Hopefully it'll be a little more fun. Have a good one.